This is Seven Seas Cruising Association. We'd like to present a new author, review a little bit of her book, and talks about tools on publishing in this webinar. Lisbeth Cullert of Plunge, One Woman's Pursuit of Life Less Ordinary. It's a wonderful book. And Sally Erdel of Caribbean Compass. She has been a lifesaver for many of us. Wonderful writer, wonderful issues online, and wonderful experiences. I'd like to thank Nautica for being the sponsor to allow us to make it possible to have this webinar that you are all watching. Nautica offers free courses for SSCA members, but they also offer courses that you can take online and get certificates through. Plunge. Let's talk a little bit about Lisbeth. She wrote a book. She sailed. She plunged. Literally, not only plunging in the water and cruising, but also plunging into writing a book. How many of us have been able to do that? And I was reading through her book, and I was dying of laughter. I've been offshore like Sally and Lisbeth, and we've sailed with our significant others and our pets and our friends. But when I read the part about Mark stepping in the cockpit, cracking his head on the doorway, and then the next thing you hear is, we're putting this boat up for sale the minute we arrive somewhere, that caught me. She shares some very personal things, wonderful stories, and I can't say enough for Lisbeth and actually doing it. So she's going to share that with us. And then Sally. Sally with Caribbean Compass, online magazine, helping people. She with Tom Hopman and with Caribbean Compass. Absolutely a marvelous author, writer, and you'll find her book, Cruising Life, on Amazon. Both Lisbeth and Sally have their books available on Amazon. Lisbeth, I think you can get your book through Women That Sail. And I'm going to stop the share. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Lisbeth, and let you share your slides and your discussions about your book and how you did it. And then we'll turn it over to Sally, and she'll do the same, and then we'll do questions and answers. If you'll notice at the bottom of your screens, all of you will see questions and answers. Those of you that are on go live on YouTube, you won't be able to see them or type in, but the questions and answer area, ask your questions and we'll answer them after Sally talks a little bit about her topics. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lisbeth. I'm going to stop my video and I will mute. And Lisbeth, turn on your sound. Yes.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lisbeth, and I will talk a little bit about myself and our cruising journey before I will dive into how I wrote and published my sailing memoir, Plunge. So my full name is Lisbeth Cullert, and I'm originally from Belgium, where I was a teacher and where I actually traveled a lot in my teens and my 20s. In 2003, I left my home country and I flew to the United States, and I never looked back after that. After a few overland adventures, for a few years, I found myself on the East Coast with my then boyfriend, Mark, and our 2 dogs. So we bought a boat in Annapolis, Maryland in 2007. In the photo, you can see our boat Irie. It's a sailing catamaran, a Fontaine Peugeot Tobago 35, which means it's 35 feet long and the width was 19 feet. And our 2 dogs were called Callie, which is the white one, and Darwin, which is the gray one. So this was the crew when we set out in the fall of 2007. As you can see on this chart, we left Annapolis in about October 2007, and we followed the ICW down south to Florida. We crossed over into the Bahamas. We spent our first hurricane season in the Dominican Republic. Then we headed east, and we spent about 3 years in the Eastern Caribbean between Grenada and St. Martin. At the end of 2011, our 2 dogs had passed away. So we actually wanted to expand our horizons, and we sailed west to the Western Caribbean We ended up in the San Blas Islands in Panama, and we spent about a year in those amazing islands. Then in early 2013, we transited the Panama Canal and we continued on to the Galapagos Islands. There we spent 2 months, and after that, we sailed on to French Polynesia. First, we reached the Gambier Islands, then we headed north to the Marquesas, spent a hurricane season there, and then we sailed back south to the Tuamotu Islands, and we ended up in the Society Islands, where we sold Irie in 2013. As you can imagine, I have a lot of photos of that 8-year journey. So here's just a little bit of a glimpse of our adventures. Starting from the bottom left, you can see Darwin and Kelly in the Bahamas. We all loved the Bahamas. The water is beautifully clear. The beach is white, sandy, and there's no leash law, which was definitely a pro for the pups. In the Eastern Caribbean, as you might know, they're very diverse. There's a lot of there are mountains, there's volcanoes, there's jungle, there's beaches, there are waterfalls. In this photo, you see our boat Irie anchored in front of Mount Pelée in Martinique. A big highlight for us was the San Blas Islands, also called Gunayala in Panama. It's basically an indigenous archipelago where the culture is very much unique still and original, and the islands are like paradise. Beautiful sandy beaches, lots of palm trees. And as I said, we spent about a year there with occasional trips to the mainland to stock up and reprovision and find better internet. Another highlight for us was the Galapagos Islands. The animal world is incredible there. Just believe everything everybody says about those islands. We love animals, we love interacting with them. So being there for 2 months was definitely up there. And then the last 2 photos, the one on the bottom and the one in the middle, are taken in French Polynesia, where we managed to immerse ourselves in the local culture during some festivals. And the bottom one, hiking, we try to do that a lot, going to the top of the islands, and then you have views like this. This photo is taken in Maupiti, very unknown, but the views over the atoll and over the lagoons is just incredible. On this slide, you also see I have a little link to the right, and that's basically, if you click on that, you'll get to a photo gallery, and those are the same photos that I have put in the back of my book Plunge. About writing, I said before I love traveling, traveled my whole life, totally enjoy it. Another passion I have is writing, and I started with diaries when I was 14 years old, and since I was 14, I've been writing every day. So that's been for over 30 years. Also, when I was backpacking in my 20s, I wrote my experiences down and sent it to friends and families. As I traveled, and from the moment internet was actually prominent, I also wrote emails to friends and family, and they were quite elaborate because I just loved sharing whatever was happening in my life. While I was on the Eastern Caribbean, I think it must have been in St. Martin around 2009, I also started writing articles. And the first articles I wrote actually were bought by Sally from Caribbean Compass. And I ended up writing quite a few destination pieces for them. And I also wrote articles for All at Sea, for Sail, Cruising World, Over Time, and also for international boating magazines in the UK and in the Netherlands and in Belgium, because I speak English and Dutch. When we started our cruising journey in 2007, I also started working on a blog, and I called it It's Irie. The name Irie.com was already taken, so I went for It's Irie.com, the name for our boat. And I just wrote about our experiences once again, those 8 years, and added a lot of photos to the blog. And the only other thing I did regarding to writing when I was on the boat was I just, as you can see in this photo, I just started writing experiences down in Word documents, my thoughts, things that went wrong, things that I enjoyed, relationship struggles, the way I felt. So that actually came in very handy in the future when I started writing my book. After we sold Irie in 2015, we moved back to the United States, and we didn't want to settle because we are just not settlers. So we discovered this lifestyle of house and pet sitting, which basically means that you take care of somebody's house and their animals in return for free rent, basically, and free utilities. So we did that for a little while, and after about a year of that, we also bought a camper van. That allowed us to cover the gaps between the house sits and give us a place to stay, so we didn't have to spend money on accommodation. It also allowed us to see a little bit of the country. So we managed to explore a lot of North America during the last 4 years of having our van. So before I get into my personal writing journey, I just want to share with you that it was very important to me to have some stability and that the logistics work out and that the resources of electricity and internet were available to manage to do this job, to write this book. So as you can see in the top photo, these are 2 photos taken during our house sits. The top one is in Oakland, California, where I have little Stella on my lap. She's a Chihuahua. And the bottom one is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I'm surrounded by 3 Labradors. So I really enjoyed when we were house and pet sitting because it allowed me to focus on my writing journey. About 2 years ago, however, we adopted our own dog, and her name is Maya. You can see her in the bottom photo there on my lap in the camper van. So for the last 2 years, we have lived full-time in our camper van. It's 19 feet long. We call him Zesty. And it's, as you can imagine, it's a little bit harder to work and focus on writing when you're constantly on the road. Then, because of COVID, this last summer, we went to Massachusetts and managed to stay in a guest room with my in-laws. So for 6 months, we were in a stable environment, and that's when this book pretty much came to fruition. So for 6 months, I could focus on the writing and the publishing, which I will elaborate on soon. And then in October, mid-October, we hit the road again. So since then, we've been full-time in our camper van again. And it's actually when I made the final steps of publishing Plunge was from our camper. Before I go into how I created this book, I want to make sure that you understand that writing and publishing is very unique. It's going to be different for everybody. So what I'm going to talk about is my own steps. And if you ever write a book and publish a book, it's going to be a little bit different. The steps might be different. They might be in different order. You might skip them. You might add some. But when it came to Plunge, the first step, which I think is probably for all books, is you have to come up with a book concept, also a time period and the goals, what you wanted to achieve in your book. But the time period is important because, especially with memoir, it's called a slice of your life. So you pick a time that is going to have a beginning and an end, and you're going to write about that. So for me, it was important personally that I not only documented or talk or show the way I sailed and lived my life as an adventurer, but also how my relationship was going. Living 24/7 together with somebody is not easy. And I was very honest in my descriptions and in whatever I wrote in my book. And I found it very important before I started that I wanted to achieve that. Also, I started my book when I met Mark, my then boyfriend who became my husband. And I end the book when we sold Irie. So I felt that was a nice chunk of time where a lot of things happened, lots of themes. And it also happened to be exactly 10 years and exactly my 30s. So that was kind of a coincidence. The goals I had with my book was I wanted to write it in the present tense because I want to draw the reader in. And I want the reader to be there with me. I'm an impulsive person. I wanted the reader to understand what decisions we faced and how we made those decisions, what was going on. And I want the reader to come with me for this ride all the way. I also incorporated some elements of fiction of the novel. I put some foreshadowing in there and some backstory, and I added some suspense, trying to end the chapters with cliffhangers, as it is called. The second step is an outline. And some people just write and write, but I find having an outline, you can just organize yourself a little bit better. So I came up with chapter titles, about 30 of them. And then I tried to focus on that title and wrote what I wanted to share with my reader. Then the real writing was going on. So back in that time, I was mostly house sitting still. So I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote way too much. So initially, I just wanted to put everything down that I found interesting for this book, and 8 years or 10 years actually is a lot of time. Then I made the mistake, I call it a mistake now, of rereading all my blogs for when we were cruising those 8 years. And of course, there were so many anecdotes that had to go in this book. So I added more and more to my book. Then I realized it was about twice the length that I wanted it to be. So then I started cutting, and I cut out about all those parts from the blog. So I could probably honestly say that was There was somewhere in there was at least 6 months that probably shouldn't have been there. So after you write this first draft of your book, the next part is editing. In my situation, I didn't rewrite a lot, I just cut a lot. So for me, editing was making the manuscript shorter and making it flow. After about 2 years of the writing and editing, I incorporated beta readers. If you're not familiar with beta readers, they are people you know who you give your book to, and they will do a first read through of this book and they will give you feedback. They will tell you what works for them and what doesn't work for them. I had 8 beta readers and I picked them from different backgrounds, different nationalities. Some were sailors, some were authors. I just made a nice mix and their feedback was invaluable. Once I got the manuscript back, it was time for more editing. So I looked at their suggestions and incorporated what I thought was important or worked out. Other things I ignored, but it was just all very valuable. As you can see, I have 2 years there. So the editing journey was mostly while we were living in our van and I didn't have a lot of time or a lot of stability to focus on this book. As we traveled north and we traveled mostly in North America and explored a little bit those years. Then we get to the next step, which is a professional editor. And I cannot stress this enough. If you want a professional book, if you want it to be good, you have to hire a professional editor. At this point, I was living in the guest room in Massachusetts when I was focusing on these next few steps. And I hired an editor to do a substantial edit and a copy edit. So you can go both ways. You can hire 2 editors for those 2 steps, or you could just hire one who does both, or you just pick one of them. Because I wanted this book to be as perfect, well, perfect doesn't exist, as good as possible. I hired the substantial editor or the editor for the substantial edit first. This means that she focuses on the content of the book. So she goes through the book and she will write up what works, what doesn't work, how something could benefit from more explanation, how something could benefit from being cut. Then I got the book back and I incorporated those changes. Then I sent it back to her and she did what's called a copy edit, which is sometimes also called a line edit. This has to do with the grammar and the spelling. So she went through all that and sent it back to me. This whole step, I have it under step 7, took about 3 months this past summer. When I received the book back, I edited once more and saw what her suggestions were and took them. Most of them I took. This was a much faster because at this point we were in September and I had promised myself that 2020 was the year I was going to publish Plunge. So I added a little more and at this point the book was, you know, for all purposes, it was finished. But there is one more important step, which is proofreaders, because there will have been mistakes snuck in there. So the proofreader, I had 2 proofreaders, friends of mine, that are very good with language, the English language. And the idea is that they read the book and they pick out inconsistencies that are still left or typos or still punctuation issues. And both proofreaders were, again, very beneficial to the end result of my book. I got the manuscript back and then it was time for the final edit, again, incorporating changes and reading the book one more time. So at this point, the book was done, right? We're all done. But it was time to publish. So as I go through the next few steps, keep in mind that most of these steps happened while I was still writing the book, while I was working on the book, because a lot of time goes in there back and forth and some stuff just happens at the same time. So the first thing I did was contact agents because I thought my book would be so good that an agent would want to pick it up and one of the big 5 publishers would be dying to publish it. So for about a year, I contacted agents. What that means is I researched agents who were interested in potentially a travel memoir, and I looked at the guidelines on their websites. I created personalized emails, and I had also written a book proposal, which is basically a business plan for your book. It took me 2 months to put that together. Keep in mind, a book proposal is only needed when you pitch a nonfiction book or a memoir. If you are pitching a fiction book, it is not important. You don't need this. You just have to write your cover letter. So I contacted 160 agents And I basically got nothing of interest back. There were lots of rejections, and most people didn't even bother, never sent me an email back. So then early last year in January 2020, I did the same, very similar process for publishers. At that time, I was already starting to think about going a different route. I only contacted about 25 publishers. Then it was March and COVID arrived, and that became the excuse of why some of these publishers were not interested in my book. So the next step is give up on the traditional route. So I decided to go the self-publishing route. Open a new big can of worms and a 24/7 full-time job. Step one, when you go the self-publishing route, is you want to research the distributors. So basically, those are the companies who will print your book and then distribute it to the customer or to stores. There are two ways of going about this. You can either go exclusive, it's called, which means you will publish with Amazon and Amazon only. Or you go wide, where you can publish with Amazon and other companies, or just other companies, but you know, you probably want to involve Amazon at this point when you sell a book. There are different options out there. Many of them you can Google if you like. You also have to decide whether you want to publish an ebook and a print version or just the ebook, which happens to some people. And one other term I want to point out is POD, which stands for print on demand. In this day and age, if you want to print and distribute your book, you want to go with a print on demand. Unless you have a lot of money, you can pay up front and hire a printer and have 1,000 or thousands of copies printed. And then you have all your books in your camper and try to sell them. So I think POD is definitely the way to go these days when you're an indie author, when you go to self-publishing. So once you do all your research there, you have to research which tools you're gonna use to format the book. It's one thing to have a book written in a Word document or Scrivener. It's another to actually make it look like a book. So there are different tools out there. I have mentioned 4 of them here. The ones with the asterisks are the ones that my husband and I used. And my husband was a big help with the formatting step. So Reedsy is good for ebooks, fair for print, and there is almost no customization possible. You're basically stuck to their layout. That's it. It's easy to use. And it's free. InDesign is a program by Adobe. It's a steep learning curve, but it's actually really good for ebook and print, and it creates professional results. It's what a lot of publishers actually use. Then Vellum is good for ebook and print, but it's only available for Apple. Kindle Create is the way to go when you go with Amazon. Also little customization like Reedsy. Once you have picked your tools, you have a lot of other formatting decisions to make. And some of these decisions will be based on which tool you picked. As I said before, if there's not a lot of customization possible, it makes it easy in a way, but you can't really go with special things you want to add to your book on the pages. So for the ebook with Reedsy, everything was straightforward. It's pretty easy. We went the way Reedsy wants us to go. There you go. But for the print book, there are many decisions. So one of them is, for example, the size of the font. You have to figure out how big you want your letters to be, how much space you want between the lines. What are you going to do about your headings? Are you going to use your book title on the heading and a chapter title, or your book title on the left and your name on the right? You have to make the same decisions for the page numbers. Do you put them on the top of the page, the bottom of the page, left, right, and so on? Will you add photos to your book? That is also a whole other job about figuring out which photos, how to resize them, how to make them look good, how to organize them, how to caption them. And then, for example, section breaks. Do you want something customized, or do you want to use something that already exists? Sometimes you have to pay for a little icon like little waves when you have section breaks in your book. When all those decisions are made, it's down to the book. And you actually have more decisions to make about the front and back matter. So front and back matter of a book is basically everything except the story in the middle. So it's what goes in the front pages and on the back pages. Usually it's decisions about the table of contents. How are you gonna write, which font were you gonna use, which size of letters, are you gonna use dots between the chapter title and the page number, and so on. You have to figure out what to do about the copyright page. About the author page. Do you even want an about the author page in your print book because it might already be mentioned on the back of your cover? The dedication page. Who are you going to dedicate the book to? What will you write? And if I can give you one tip about this step, I would add in the back of your book a page where you ask for reviews. So right as the reader finishes reading your book, make a little note and ask them to leave an honest review, because reviews are very important to spread the word about your book and also to sell a book in the future. Then there are administrative decisions to make. ISBN numbers, all books need them. Will you buy a pack of 10? Will you buy 2? Are you planning on writing more because it's more books later because it's cheaper to buy in bulk? Amazon or some companies already provide ISBNs for free. It's a whole project to look into. Publishing your book, are you going to use your own name as the publisher, or will you come up with a publishing company? We decided to create a publishing company and called it Roaming About Press. So you have to figure out the name, you have to figure out a logo. Then you might also need a business license for your publishing company, depending on your state. For us, the book is published in Massachusetts, so we needed to get the business license. Another important decision is your cover. Again, you can do that yourself. There are a lot of free tools out there, or paid tools, or you can hire a professional. I went the professional way, again, because I really wanted this book to be as good as possible. It added about a month to my creation of Plunge, because there were lots of emails back and forth with the cover designer. I sent photos, she came up with a design. It was not what I had in mind, and there you go. But the end result, I'm pretty happy with. The next step is proofing the files. Very important. So at this point, you actually have 2 books. You have the print and the ebook. Each are a project in itself. So you have to ideally read both books completely. So for us, that was in Readsy, and it was a PDF that came from the InDesign. What you want to look for is hyphenation. You can see at the end of the line, you know, some of these words are 15 characters long, and the hyphenation is after the first 2 characters. So is that what you want? Do you want to change that? Your chapter location. Do you want every chapter to start on the right? Or are you okay with, if a chapter ends on the right, to have the new chapter start on the left page right behind it? The header and the footers. Do you want it all through the book consistently? Or do you want, for example, in the photo gallery, do you not want the titles up there, the header and the footer, the name of your book, the name of your chapter? And you have to figure that out for other pages as well. Once you prove the files and you're happy with it all, you're done. You upload the book. You can do that also in different places. I decided to go with Amazon first and let that rest for a little bit, the ebook and the print book, to make sure that all the quirks were worked out, that people could order it, that it was all pretty straightforward. I think about a month after publishing Plunge, I used Draft to Digital for my ebooks and Ingram Spark for my print versions. Then the next step in the journey, so your book's out there now, mostly, and now you're gonna be rich and sell a lot of books, except you do have to work still. You have to work for those sales. So here are a few suggestions that I have if you end up publishing a book and you are coming up with a promotion plan. First, I put my book, the ebook, on pre-order on Amazon. So you can only do the pre-order with ebooks, not with print books. The reason you do this is to create buzz, to have people interested in what you came up with. You know, you put it on social media and, hey, my book's available, you can buy it now, and the sales start coming in. The book is not available yet until it actually goes live, but you can already put the book on pre-sale. I did that about 2 weeks before the book actually became available. I also offered a discount of $1 on the ebook, and that's another way of advertising it. Hey, if you buy my book now for $1, it's $1 less than 2 weeks from now. And again, more buzz, more people interested, hopefully some sales will start coming in. Another important step I find is ARC readers. ARC stands for Advanced Reader Copy. What this means is that you will contact some readers, avid readers, ideally in your genre. So my genre was travel memoir. What happens is you send them the ebook for free in return for an honest review. The little bit of a hiccup or the catch with this is that Amazon does not allow people to post reviews until the book actually becomes available. But Goodreads does accept reviews from the moment somebody posts them. So again, you want these reviews because it alerts people, potential buyers, what people think about your book and what the book's about, and it's basically a selling tool. And it's nice that once you put your book up for sale officially, that there's already a few reviews up live. Step 3, the big day, launch day. This is what you've been waiting for. This is the day. This is your day. This is when your book just goes out there. It's open to the world, and people will start buying it. So on that day, you definitely want to advertise or promote as much as possible on your blog if you have one, on your social media. If you have, I'm sure you have an email list, people, acquaintances, people you know. Think about anybody that you have their email address from. Send them an email, tell them your book's available, and hope that they're interested in reading it. Something else you can do is write press releases and contact magazines and newspapers about you, about your book, asking for reviews. Try to find the email address of the book reviewers. Of course, you're also going to post on social media pages. My tip with that is to be a little creative. Try different approaches. On one page, for example, you can post a photo of you holding your book in a nice location and publicize your book. Another page, you can post one of the first reviews that came in, one of your first 5-star reviews. Another page, you can basically say that you were a #1 release on Amazon in any of the categories that you actually were an Amazon #1 release. New release on Amazon. You want to probably try to create some guest posts and interviews and send them or ask people to interview you from different blogs or bloggers that you know. And then you hope for a presentation for the SSCA. At that point, you can make a little bit of publicity about your book. So I just have put a few links up here. The first one brings you to my blog and gives you more information, the blurb about the book, and some review information. If you want to buy the book on Amazon, this link is global. So wherever you are in the world, this will bring you to the book page of Plunge. Reviews on Goodreads is the next link. And then the last link is very interesting, if I say so myself, to people who are actually planning on writing and publishing their book. Because I actually once a month for the last 4 years, once a month, every first Wednesday of the month, I gave an update about my journey, my writing journey and the publishing journey of Plunge, with all the tips, all the things I learned, the steps I went through, what I wish I didn't do, and how I actually eventually ended up self-publishing Plunge. I'm gonna give the word back to Joan now.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. Will you unshare your screen?
I'm trying to find it. Okay, sorry.
There you go. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Wonderful journey, good way of describing how to publish a book, and it's a lot of work. Sally, now you're a publisher. You take
Yes, I am.
materials from people, and you've done a book as well. Share a little bit about what you're doing, which is very different than what Elizabeth's doing. You're compiling many inputs. You're synthesizing, really. And I'm going to let you take it from there.
Okay, thank you very much. And hello to all the fans out in the rest of the world who are watching. Thanks for being with us, and thanks to Joan for hosting us, and to Lisbeth for sharing her adventures sailing, writing, and publishing. I have to say that what I do, Lisbeth, is a lot easier. But how I got into being an editor of a sailing magazine, I've always been an avid reader, and when I started sailing and first came to the Caribbean, I submitted a few articles to sailing magazines that were accepted, which is always a big boost. There was a small sailing magazine in the Virgin Islands at the time, Virgin Island Boating. And that was the only dedicated publication that I knew of at the time in the entire Caribbean region. I also had the privilege of working with Chris Doyle, who was a friend. We had both been working on charter boats and got to know each other. And when he started putting out his early editions of the Sailor's Guide to the Windward Islands, I had the privilege of working with him on that. And that was a great experience. And then I met my husband, Tom, here in Bequia. Where you see me now, this is intergalactic headquarters of Compass Publishing Limited. It's a small cottage on the island of Bequia, and you can probably hear the tree frogs in the background. Tom and I did a circumnavigation, and as we traveled, this was from 89 to 94, and we read everything we could about the places that we were going to visit and the places where we were. And this was before the internet, so everything that we could find to read was in print. When we got to New Zealand, we needed to have some work done on our boat, which was, it was an old 1964 Rhodes 41, one of the first fiberglass production boats. And we decided to stay in New Zealand for a year to finish the work on the boat that we needed to complete our circumnavigation. And I happened to be lucky enough to get a job as a feature writer for the local newspaper, the Northern Advocate, for that year. And it was basically like an apprenticeship in newspaper work, because although I was a feature writer, everything in the Northern Advocate was in one building: the editorial offices, the photo studio, the advertising department, the presses were in the basement. It was a one-stop shop to create this newspaper. And I became addicted. I thought, this is just great. You know, this is something I could do. But of course we were sailing, so it didn't happen. When we got back to Bequia, it was just before New Year's Eve, the change from 94 to 95. And we were invited to a friend's boat for drinks on New Year's Eve. And there was another circumnavigator there. And he was retired. He was telling us that his father had had a small newspaper in California. And this fellow, his name was Bob Law, he said he had some money saved up as seed money, and he would like to start a newspaper, but he didn't want to do it himself. And he was willing to donate this, this seed money to help somebody get started. And he said, do you know anybody who wants to start a newspaper? Well, Tom and I looked at each other. We said, bingo, you know, this is it. We were shocked by, you know, the Compass was born, and it was immediately successful because as far as we knew, there was nothing like it yet in the Caribbean. We didn't know about All at Sea, which had started at about the same time in the Virgin Islands, but we didn't know about each other because it was still, the internet was still in its infancy and we weren't in contact. Anyway, there was a great demand between, you know, from the readers and the writers. We were able to pay back our angel within the first year, and the rest is history. We've been publishing the Compass every month since March of 1995. For those not familiar with us, Caribbean Compass is a free monthly publication for, by, and about sailors and related topics in the Caribbean. It comes in a print form, which is tabloid size, and it's also available free online at www.caribbeancompass.com. As Lisbeth mentioned, she helped launch her fabulous writing career by writing articles for the Compass. And I hope some of you do too. As Lisbeth discovered, you don't have to be a professional, or at least not yet, to have your work published in Compass. We love publishing articles from amateur and other freelance writers. And the only qualification you really need is to have an appropriate story for our readership that you're bursting to tell. It's like Lisbeth wanting to share her findings about cruising with pets with other sailors in the islands. We're very proud to say that Captain Fatty Goodlander has said about Compass, No other marine publication in the world that I know of has encouraged so many literary sailors to pick up the pen. So if you're ready to pick up your pen, what do you need to do to maximize your chances of being published in Caribbean Compass or any other magazine, really? So I'd like to share with you 5 tips to keep in mind. And let me see if I can make this work. Oops, it disappeared. Share. Bingo. Okay. First, do some research. Study your target publication and see what they're published. There's no point in sending an article about bicycling in the Andes to Compass. And there's no point in sending a sailing article to a publication that only does bicycles. Try to come up with something suitable for the magazine that you're targeting, but also keep in mind that it should be something fresh and new. Don't try to copy what somebody else has already done, but tell your story. And Compass's archive of back issues in PDF form is available on our website. That's a really useful resource. Follow the guidelines. Magazines will have writer's guidelines or submission guidelines available online or by request. Read them and please follow them. Take special note of submission deadlines and meet the deadlines. Unlike publishing a book, which you can do in your own time schedule, magazines have print deadlines, and we need to get all the ingredients ready for the printer on the day that they're going to print, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. So take note of the submission deadlines and please do your best to meet them. And our guidelines are available also on our website. The link is there. A really important thing when you're writing for a magazine, some of the best advice I ever heard was write as if you were writing to an intelligent but as yet uninformed friend. Don't write what you think a magazine article should be. Don't try to write like somebody else. Be yourself. The best stories will likely tap into your personal experience. And avoid things that are formulaic. I know things like listicles get popular, 10 best cheeseburgers in paradise, or 10 this or 10 that. Avoid that. Just tell a story that you really want to tell. And also, some magazines do like to receive a query letter. You say you have an idea and you might like to write about this. But many small magazines have very small staffs and short deadlines. And for that reason, we prefer that you submit a finished article that's in sail away condition rather than a query letter. And that's because sometimes a query might sound good, and you save space in your layout for that article that you're expecting to come in. And when it arrives, somehow it just misses the boat. And then everybody's stuck and has wasted their time. So we prefer to see an article that is in pretty much finished condition. And we will edit it. There will be copy editing, line editing, some substantial editing if it needs it. But do the best you can to send us a finished work. And another thing, high quality photos with captions, please, are a huge plus. And the specifications for photos can be found in our writer's guidelines. Keep in mind that if you're taking photos with the intent of having them published in a magazine, they should be high resolution. If you don't know what that means, just set your camera to the biggest pictures possible. And then when submitting an article, introduce yourself and your article with a short cover letter. And it's really important to find out the editor's name, who you're going to write to, and direct your cover letter to that person by name. For Compass, it's me. Write to Sally, please. And for larger magazines, it's usually the features editor or a specific department editor. But please don't, dear sir, or to whom it may concern, to an editor that just sounds like, hey, you. It indicates that you really didn't care enough to find out who you were going to be communicating with. And the relationship between the editor and a freelance writer is really important. Once you establish that relationship, it's important for everybody's career. It's important for editors to have a good relationship with their writers, and it's important for the writers to have a good relationship with their editors. So when you first come in contact with us, please don't call me dear sir. I hate that. And your cover letter can be short and sweet. For example, dear Sally, please consider my 1,000-word article about cruising in the US Virgin Islands during the COVID pandemic. I'm cruising aboard a 40-foot boat with my husband and 2 children. Thank you very much, and leave your contact information. Let's see. Sorry, I've lost my notes here. Okay, to recap. So it's easy, right? Do some research on what your target magazine likes to publish. Follow their guidelines. Tell your story. Be yourself. Tell your story, but tell it in publishable form and submit it to the editor person. But a word to the wise, unless you are extremely talented and intend to make it your life's work, in other words, a real job, writing for magazines will at most help top up your cruising kitty. As the editors of the Harvard Post wrote, and I've kept this on my desk for 20 years, and it goes for small magazines as well as newspapers. Our newspaper supports itself, certainly, and it contributes to the success of a number of people, but it will never make us or anyone else rich. The richness of the newspaper life is of a different sort. There is no better way to become intimately involved in a community. Ultimately, we believe in small newspapers because we believe in small communities. Each new publication adds to our collective independence by resisting the appalling homogenization of culture and information that is brought on by a centralized news establishment. So we welcome writers to join the cruising community of writers and join us at Compass. And now I think we'll be welcoming questions, so fire away.
Well, and Sally, that's wonderful. And if you want to take the share down, it'll bring all our faces up. I'll bring my face up again.
Okay.
And that was a really nice roll-up, Elizabeth, for books and publishing from a book. And Sally, from your perspective of those of us who might want to submit articles to you, I know that you've been a wonderful resource for many, many issues in the Caribbean. It's just a joy to work with you. Does anyone have questions? Now, there's question and answers down here at the bottom. And if someone, I can see some participants here. We have Ellen. Joyful is here. Janet Gannon, Steve Pryor. I can't see all of them. This is new to us too. I'm going to let the Posners. Would you like to talk? I don't know. Maybe they don't want to talk. Hi, I can see you there.
No, we're fine, thank you. This is Ann and Jeff Posner from Joyful. And thank you very, very much for putting on this webinar. These two women that you have asked to speak have answered so many questions that we've had about how we're going to start publishing our first books regarding our circumnavigation. And thank you so much. Both of your speeches were very clear, and we took screenshots, and we're going to really take what you said at heart, and it's wonderful guidance for us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. I'm glad to see that you enjoyed that. If anyone else is interested, they can raise their hands or say hi. I see a hand here. Janet, allowed to talk. Janet Gannon. And there's Ellen, would like to talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Janet, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Well, this is a great talk. I really enjoyed it. And I think like a lot of people who enjoy writing, I really enjoy reading as well. And I haven't gotten to read your book yet, Lisbeth, but it will be right on my list. I've read a lot of really great books about travel and sailing and a lot of great articles, but I've also read some real dogs. And I wonder if you guys can recommend maybe what some of your favorite writing is in the sailing community, either as, you know, travel memoirs or Sally, from your perspective, you know, just articles that you read that just blew you out of the water.
Lisbeth, go ahead.
Well, I know that writers are supposed to read a lot. And believe me, I enjoy reading. I just don't find a lot of time for it. That being said, when I was sailing those 8 years, one of my favorite books was The Motion of the Ocean by Jenna Carr's Essere. And the other one was Tight What's on the Loose by Wendy Hinman. Now, they're a little bit older books, but they really inspired me. They're well told, well-written stories. And I had both of them. I still have both of them. One of the few books I really still have in paperback. And I definitely use them in my own journey, my writing journey. And I even communicated with both authors, and they were very helpful for me when I had questions about creating a sailing memoir. So I guess there's other travel memoirs. I have to think now, but those are definitely my two favorite ones. So over to you, Sally.
Oh, it's hard to say, Janet, because I have to confess, I will read anything, and anything and everything, and it's hard to pick a favorite because, you know, is it a cruising memoir? Is it something more personal? One book that really got me that wasn't necessarily about cruising was Lynn Pardee's Bull Canyon. I like reading old cruising memoirs about, you know, when people were cruising. Just recently I came across one. It was written during World War II, and it's about cruising the Virgin Islands and the Eastern Caribbean. It was incredible. It was about, I can't think of the woman's name, but it's out of print, unfortunately. But other things, magazines also. Yachting World is a terrific magazine. Outside magazine is excellent, but it's not always, very rarely about sailing, but when they do write about sailing, it's really good. But I would say a lot of it, you know, it depends on your taste and what you're looking for. You know, if you're actively cruising in, say, the South Pacific, a book about the South Pacific might really grab you. But if you're somewhere else, you might be more interested in something local. But I would say just keep asking.
Well, you know, the Ross were stellar. Margaret, we saw her at the Annapolis Boat Show all the way up to about 4 years ago, I think. But they had some wonderful travel books. Now, Simon Pryor had a question, Lisbeth, and so I just let him come up to ask the question. Simon, would you like to ask your question? I hear the crickets. Simon's question,
He,
how long would you put your book on pre-order for, Lisbeth? Ah, Lisbeth. Yeah.
In my situation, since this was my first book I ever wrote and published, I was obviously very new to it. I put it up for pre-order for 2 weeks. I think it would probably benefit from at least 2 weeks. I would recommend probably between 2 weeks and 4 weeks to just create as much buzz and also give you enough time to get your act together. I came up with a self-inflicted deadline, which I would not necessarily recommend when it's your first book because it causes a lot of stress. But to answer your question, Simon, and thank you for answering a question, for asking a question, I would probably say between 2 and 4 weeks.
And we have Ellen who's got her hand up. Ellen, can you unmute? There. Hi, Ellen.
Hi there. Well, this was wonderful. I enjoyed everything that Sally and Lisbeth had to say. And I would have a question of Lisbeth. I'm wondering, I'm about 54,000 words into my book about piracy off Venezuela, which was now 10 years ago. So you can feel really good about yourself that you made it. You haven't drug it out this long. But I really have had trouble finding either what I felt was a good copy editor or this substantial editor that you're describing. And I'm wondering what process you went through to identify, because what I found when I would reach out on an online service, these people wouldn't even tell me why. Because I explained what the nature of my book was. And I said, tell me why you would be the person I should select. And out of 25 people that responded, not one single one told me why they were the copy editor I should select. So I'm interested in how you chose your editors.
All right, well, first, thank you for the question, Ellen, and congratulations on all the words you have put down so far. It's a lot of work for anybody. I would highly recommend, if this is even possible, to take somebody's recommendation personally. So if you know other authors, other memoir authors or sailing memoir authors, I would try to go there first because I do think that's probably the most valuable. I did not go that route. I researched, several names, and I stumbled across the same problem as you. And another big issue is for me anyway, is cost. Editors can be extremely expensive. I mean, they're doing a big job. I'm not, complaining about it, but there's definitely a big range in their fees that they charge as well. What I actually ended up doing is I follow a blog of a woman called Jane Friedman, and she basically writes mostly about articles about the craft of nonfiction and about memoirs in particular. And she has a resource list on her blog about people that she trusts or has firsthand experience with. So if you could find somebody you look up to or a guru in the field, they usually have resources on their website as well. I ended up selecting about 5 editors that I felt comfortable with because of my research, and then I sent them emails. And as you might be aware of, some people will give you, you can send them a sample of your work, and then they will just edit it, and you can see whether you like their style. Now, this is not possible for substantial, and I know that was your main question, but for copy and line edits, that's definitely a way you could go. Because a lot of editors will give you that for free. I just wanted to say one more thing. I do regret that I used the same editor for the substantial round and the copy edit. I was very happy with my editor on the substantial level, but I was not very happy on the copy edit level. So it's trial and error, to be honest. You're never gonna know whether the editor you pay thousands of dollars is actually gonna be the right one. So I would also recommend that when you inquire with editors, to try to have a conversation going, and you will get their style and how responsive they are, what their sense of humor is, what their style is. You can actually figure out a lot from just a few emails back and forth.
And we have Tad Richards. Tad, would you unmute? I muted you because I was hearing some chatter in the background. probably some interference. But there we go. Tad, you had a question or would like to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Sally, a writer doesn't really need that much in the way of equipment, but if you want to be writing and photographing, what do you recommend for a photojournalist to have to get started submitting to you?
As a photojournalist, I think, I'm just seeing a note, my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The photographs that we mostly publish are illustrating an article, and the photo has to, of course, support the article, and the technical quality has to be pretty high because we print on newsprint, and if everything looks good on the screen and it can be low resolution, but to print on newsprint it has to be high resolution because of the printing process. But what we would love to receive is a wide selection of photos. You can send thumbnails that we can choose from, or you can send a selection through Dropbox or WeTransfer or one of those types of programs. What exactly, Tad, did you have in mind?
Basically that, if you're starting out and you want to be submitting to Caribbean Compass and you have some ideas, what equipment do you need? Do you need professional camera equipment? Can you do it on your phone?
Absolutely not. Phones these days take terrific pictures, and a lot of the work we publish, with the exception of the cover, those are usually taken with actual professional cameras. But for the inside the magazine, phone photos, if you take them, like I said, large, you take the largest photos that your phone will take, those are just fine. Photos taken with phones these days are really excellent.
I don't have it. Thank you. Hey, I wanted to thank everyone for listening, and I was chattering away, but I wanted to thank Thad for asking a question about photographs because we hadn't covered that. And yeah, cell phones or what's worked for me, and people send me photos and I send them to Sally. I look for the higher resolution photos. There's sometimes you can grab stuff and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You send a batch of good quality, as high quality as you can get, give her some choices and let them put it into the document. It doesn't work putting it in the document and sending it, it just scrambles. But you have to explain what the pictures are when you submit a document. But I appreciate this, everyone attending, everyone talking, and this is streamed to YouTube. There's a YouTube channel this is on and will be captured, and I can put Elizabeth's links and a link to Caribbean Compass in that for YouTube. It will also be posted on SSCA's Seven Seas University that we're just trying to stand up. And I want to thank you all. Sally, thank you, and I hope you have a good evening with your little dogs. And a wonderful evening. And the Posners and Ellen and Simon and Tad, thank you so much. And we will talk to you later. Keep an eye on ssca.org and watch for other events that we're having. And join us again. Good night.
Thank you very much, Joan, for putting this together.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome.